Hello, everyone. Welcome. Ruthie Renee with Quantum Field Trips, and I am so excited to introduce you to Andrea Faye. She has been in my world for many moons. We lived near each other way back a number of years ago, and I've watched her life and her career blossom. And I just only recently found out we are both hypnotherapists. So, of course, I had to have her on here so we can talk about that. But she's so many other things as well. And every so once in a while, I'll get together with a person and we'll just chat before I start recording. And this is one of those that I wish I were recording from the very beginning. So, just a little bit about Andrea. She is an admired and trusted teacher who has helped hundreds heal from deep wounds, past trauma, and broken relationships. Through her seminars, her workshops, online courses, and one on one coaching, Andreas taught many people how to love and live the life they were born for. As a mother, business owner, and emotion enthusiast, Andrea has structured programs designed to guide others through their emotions and into a state of being. With her background in neurolinguistics and clinical hypnotherapy, if one leans into their experience with Andrea, they will find the deepest experience in liberation. I love that. That is beautiful. So, Andrea, before we get too far in, I want to ask you just what do you mean by just a state of being?
I get this question a lot, actually. It's uncomplicated. It's really like it's one of those things where I don't know if you've heard the quote, if you don't understand it simply, you don't understand it completely. And it's one of those very simple concepts. Being is just a space of not complacent, but contentment. A place where you're in peace and tranquility, a place where you're in joy and happiness. It's quite neutral and quite freeing. So that being state is a state you get into in deep meditation often, and you can actually begin to be like that just day in and day out, like with your daily living.
Yeah, like balance. I was thinking, oh, it's the quantum field. That's where we go, and we just are
Mhm.
everything and nothing all at the same time. I love it. So tell me about your background in neurolinguistics and clinical hypnotherapy, and where did that begin, and what do
With
you
all
do?
of that,
Yeah.
um, where it began, it began in my, like a lot of healers and coaches, it begins in my own story and what became quite healing for me. I was doing, as you know, I was running a salon and a spa and working day in and day out on people's outer beauty, and found myself wanting to do more. And I did have a background in psychology. And so a little bit of that would kind of mix into my daily, like, interactions with my clients. And so I loved that aspect of just helping people emotionally and mentally. And then it got to a point where I was unable to work. My body started to break down. I had a lot of bone deterioration and my joints were just locking in place. And I would find myself just dipping in my like blood pressure and had just a lot of weird complications coming up. And so I started going to all the people were told to go to, the doctors, the professionals, anybody that could help me, and was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. So that was some of the joint problems. But then I had this weird deterioration of bones that they couldn't explain. And it was in my jaw, actually, still is, where I don't have jaw joints. I don't actually have a joint in my jaw, it's just bone on bone.
Oh,
And it would just stop, it would just lock, and I couldn't eat. And it was around the holidays when you want all the good food. So I was just like, what do I do? I'm determined to see this fixed. And my jaw specialist is like, are you open to alternative therapies? I was like, huh, do you know me? Because I'm always open to that. I love that. I love different modalities and knowing that so many people have different talents out there. So he referred me to a hypnotherapist, and what it took years for people to even like get some momentum in my diagnosis and healing, this woman was able to do in like 2 weeks. Like all of a sudden I had all this mobility back. And then the pain was subsiding quite a bit. And I was able to work again, and I was able to actually function again. And my migraines were going away. And I was like, what is this? I want to know the science behind it. I want to know how it worked. And I was like, why have I not been told about this before? And so I just dove into it, and I found the school I wanted to go to, and I started, I dove in. I still did a little hair on the side. Um, but I started gobbling up all of this wonderful education and information. And then it took me into neurolinguistics. So it was like a step further, and it integrated all the psychology that I had studied years ago, and then brought in like this alternative way of healing, which to me just takes it into the real root of it all.
Mhm.
Um, and then it expanded from there. And my heart was just, it's just excited. And so excited that I'd found the answers for myself, and excited to just give this to people,
Mhm.
to all my clients at the salon spa. I was just like, oh my gosh, I have more for you guys. And so, yeah, I stopped doing that, and I just dove right into coaching and right into hypnosis, and supported people in healing from that space. And so that's my story on how that all happened, and then it expanded from there.
Wow. So it's interesting because as you're talking about the different symptoms that were being created, I'm thinking, oh, your jaw, and that's you were keeping your voice shut for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and then all the other meanings with the rheumatoid arthritis, there's always an emotional element
Yes.
with our physical being. It's just displayed that way. It's just the way it happens in this journey. Somewhere along the way, you recreated your identity somewhat.
About the shift.
The shift, and with your name, and
Oh, yes. So I had been doing coaching for about 5, 6 years. Love it, have loved it, and still love it. But yeah, things started to shift big time in my life, like it did for everybody in 2020.
Mhm.
And um, the healing that I had already done around, like I mentioned, my jaw had a lot to do with past trauma that I had as a child. And I thought I had done all my healing around it, so didn't think it was, still following me at all. I had no idea, and you don't know what you don't know. So,
Right.
as I got older, well, in 2020, a lot of things started to rumble in my life. Things weren't working in my marriage that we thought were working. Things started to shift big time, and he's still a great friend, right, by the way. So it wasn't really him as much as it was just knowing we were growing in different spaces. Things in my career, I was finding like it wasn't working. It was like things would just kind of crumble all of a sudden. That's at least how it felt. Other relationships that were coming up were kind of just crumbling in the weirdest way. And I was just like, okay, there's something to notice here. There's a common denominator, me. And so what is this? What is actually happening? And then, like I said, my ex and I had separated. I started dating, and I met a man that he came into my life for a reason. And I understand that reason now. But at the time, I would have never imagined it would happen to me. The man that came into my life triggered me back into my childhood trauma. And then everything opened up.
Mhm.
And I remembered the severity of abuse that I had been through, and I could see things, and it was really clear. Like I could show you the houses, I could show you the people, I could probably even name some of them that I could not before. And I didn't know that I didn't remember those things. I just didn't know. I had remembered one little event, but I had no idea that there was a series of events that had led to the dialogue that I had carried around for years and years, and had actually like shaped my adult life. And I started to see the patterns and understand, like, oh my gosh, these relationships are a result of this dialogue going on inside me. And it all had a lot to do with not saying something, not speaking up, keeping myself shut down and shut off, out of fear that had been following me since I was a child. Just had no idea. And so the other thing I was taught from there, and then growing up just in the environment that I'd grown up in was, life was about pleasing the people around you and making everybody else happy. And I was the middle child, and that usually follows middle children and all
Mm-hmm.
of this. So it was like just an escalate of all these things came up. And I was doing my best to rummage through all the healing that I needed to heal from my past. And then in my current life, because having been triggered into that created a lot of other fears and PTSD that um, took over my life for about a year. I found myself disassociating a lot. I just wasn't myself. I knew I wasn't healthy based on what I knew about emotions, and I knew about people that get into a space of that's not safe. I knew that I wasn't in a safe space. And so I actually checked myself into the hospital because I recognized that I wasn't okay. And so checking myself into there was really weird and really hard on my ego. And but more than anything, it was far from real healing. It was just a space to keep me more quiet and to keep me from,
Um,
taking even my own life, which that was the point, was, to keep myself safe.
right.
But it wasn't healing. And so I knew that I had to hone into like what I knew was healing. And I knew that I was going to be the one to supply it to myself, and that the professionals really couldn't do it. It really needed to be me. But I did, however, know that I needed somebody to like bounce things off of. I need somebody to talk to. So I did have a therapist, and I do always suggest to people, like, if you're ever in that state, reach out, find people.
Right.
There are professionals there waiting for you. And often they can supply you with all the resources, but it's not going to do anything until you choose into it, until you choose into the healing, right? So we
Yes,
know.
there's the key.
Yeah, I was so afraid though of the healing, because even based on what I do or did with hypnosis and neurolinguistics, there's things called timelining. You go back to the time that the pain happened, you supply yourself with the resources you didn't have, you bring it up into the current, it changes the neural pathways in the brain. And I was collecting so much information and trying to process so much. My central nervous system had shut down. I was really sick. I couldn't even keep in food. I'd lost a lot of weight. I was just really not okay.
Oh,
And yeah, unfortunately, without getting into all the nitty gritty, it actually led to me getting so sick that another time I chose into taking my life. I remember when it happened, I had a choice, like, to either choose back in, and I was clear at that point when I did pass over or did um, release my body. I remember all of a sudden it was clear where I was really foggy and unclear in the human body, in the human form. All of a sudden I was clear and like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I chose this life on purpose. I chose my children on purpose. I chose all these experiences on purpose. And I was really clear, even though they were awful. And I don't love that anybody has been through what I've been through. I did it on purpose. There's a reason for it. And I was so sure of that I chose back in. And um and I remember when I chose back in, I said, this life is mine, it's nobody else's. I make the choices for myself. And if other people benefit, awesome. Which is really what it comes down to anyways, is that we're doing things, what feels like even our for ourselves ends up being for humanity anyways.
of course. Yeah.
But when you're really clear with yourself and you're really aligned with who you are in your higher self, it influences and liberates those around you.
Hmm.
It activates things inside of them that they've maybe forgotten about, or somewhere along the line just didn't really capture. But the more that you live in your freedom and your liberation and who you actually are, the more it liberates them. I
Yes.
hesitate to say, I hesitate to use the word inspire or motivate, because those are beautiful, where inspiration is pulling and bringing people up, motivation is pushing and helping people come up and out, and both beautiful. Liberation is something that exists inside them already, where they
Yes.
begin to be the ones that bring themselves up and out. And so that's why I use that word a lot. And that's exactly what I began to do in my healing is I began to liberate myself. I began to wake up the parts of me that I hadn't activated and or looked at. Um, and honestly, probably even couldn't because of what was running in my subconscious. I was so unaware of until what happened.
Right.
Um, and so it came down to my name, like you said, you asked me about my name, where my name was Andrea, and is a beautiful name. And I'm grateful. My mom named me after a wonderful woman that she knew. But it didn't resonate with my heart. It didn't resonate with who I actually feel I am. And so when people would ask me after this happened, this experience of liberation, or, well, the experiences of liberation were happening as I continued to go, okay, this is my life. How do I choose? Where do I step forward? How do I create the life that I want to create? People would ask me, "Is your name said Andrea or Andrea?" Which they had asked me since I was a little girl. And I always said Andrea because that's what my mom called me, right? Or that's what
Mhm.
my parents named me. But it hit me so different from then on out. It was like Andrea, because I love that. Andrea, because it's so beautiful to me. Andrea, because it means what it means to me. I mean, I was looking up, like, even with this little change in the name, what does it do? And I had studied numerology and the vibration of your, even your name, and it
Mhm.
just resonated. And it just, I mean, chills up my spine. And I had even spiritual experiences around it. And it was like, okay, so this is what carries the energy or the vibration I want to express in this life. And so I'm going to own that. I'm going to own saying it, Andrea. And
Yeah.
it's kept me on that, like, it's kept me clear on my path, which is great. It's kept me clear on my intention and on my message. And so Andrea is what it's now. Legally it is Andrea, but that's what it remains. So
And what is the meaning of Andrea?
Andrea, it actually means a man's woman, where Andrea is the sunlight after the rain, or the sun that comes out through the shadows. And so I was like,
Uh,
hi.
no
Is that,
kidding.
yeah, is that not on point or what? And then it
Right.
also, well, my middle name is Faye. And when you say it from the space that Andrea comes from, Faye, it means faith. And so, yeah, that's why I just like gobbled it up, because I was like, yeah, I mean, a lot of my healing started with faith, started with this. I don't know what the next step's going to look like, but I'm going to trust myself and take it anyways. And so it was like, yeah, you live your name, you just do.
That's beautiful. And I love I love all that you shared because I too use my first and my middle name. And it has deep meaning to me. For me, it's the female shepherd guide. I'm a guide, and then Renee is a rebirth. So I guide people through their own personal rebirth, which is much like your liberation, liberating the soul within to step into your purpose, to who you are on the inside, what you were designed to do, designed to be. It's all such a beautiful story. And thank you for sharing. I just had to have you share because it was so similar to my experience and my awakening. And I do believe that so many people did have that same experience. 2020, I remember back in 2019, everybody was, oh, I can't wait for 2020, the year of perfect vision. And
Oh,
it was. It was.
it
However,
was.
we aren't just gifted those types of qualities. We have opportunities and circumstances to show us those qualities. And so the
Correct.
perfect vision came, and boy, did we get to see who everybody was when
Yeah.
in the state of a crisis, the true nature comes out. And we both went through our own shifts in life and stepping into that. So that thank you for sharing. That is
Oh,
beautiful.
thank
I'm
you.
gonna just wow, what a story and adventure. I ooh, okay. I'm gonna interject this one little piece because as I'm listening, this is something I just figured out a few days ago, and I may be way off, and if so, I'll edit it out. So this is a theory that I've just discovered. In hypnosis, oftentimes we do the age regression, or like you're talking about, the timeline therapy, and we'll go back to the sensitizing event. And when I'm with a client before we go into hypnosis, I'm not sure, you tell me if this is how you do things. I will always prep them by saying, trust your intuition. Whatever story, whatever memory comes up, it's the right one. Even if, like you said, oh, I thought I've already dealt with all of that trauma, but obviously there were still pieces that were connected to you physically. And I
Mhm.
had the same experience with my own first hypnosis session. I was like, my mind said, oh no, I already took care of that in talk therapy. And then, oh, surprise, what came out after. So you allow or trust this story to come out, even though it seems like it doesn't connect at all with the problem or the issue you're working to address. But after all of the all of the questions and all of the stuff, all the connections come together, and you see how, oh, of course I had to bring this story up because that led to this piece, and that led over here, and this emotion, this thought, and bam, problem solved. Do you have that experience?
Yes.
It's
Yep.
it's so fun. And
Yeah.
then I realized just the other day, with our problems, our trials, our struggles, and even some ugly things that happen in our lives, afterwards, hindsight is 2020. Afterwards, you start to see the connection and be like, oh, of course I had to get into that car accident because that led me to this experience, which led me to where I am now. And
Yeah.
so I realized, oh my gosh, all of life is like a hypnotherapy session.
Yeah,
And
it is.
everything seemed like that. It just doesn't seem like it would connect. I see you. I haven't seen you for quite a while on social media. I haven't really been engaged in social media. I see your little story pop up, and I was like, huh, I haven't talked to her in a while. And I reach out, and now here we are speaking together and finding out your story is so similar to
So
mine.
aligned. Yeah.
And when you were talking about giving, um, empowering other people by finding your own footing, and those weren't the words you used, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Uh-huh.
uh, we give permission to the people around us to step into their own life. And so it's just such a joy. So what I love, one of my favorite parts about these interviews is the stories. So tell me about your favorite or craziest or most, oh my gosh, unbelievable hypnotherapy or coaching story, something with a client. Do you have one?
Oh man, now I'm seeing like a bunch of them.
I know. Now you got to whittle it down. How many hours do we have?
I know. One that's just coming in so clear right now is a dear client of mine. I saw her 5, 6 years ago, probably the last time that you knew I was like transitioning from doing the hair industry to coaching, and was just taking a few clients here and there. Anyways, we did what's like timelining or past life regression.
Mhm.
And that comes up when you hit like those theta waves and you can get somebody in that, hypnotic state. And
Right.
she was just the perfect client because she trusted the process. And she went in and she began to see past, future, and present in one. And I had studied the work of that and what happens in the quantum field. And we don't have time to go into this, but how everything is actually happening at the same time and nothing's actually linear. It's all nonlinear, right?
Yeah.
And she was at the time in her life, she was divorced. She was kind of single, kind of dating somebody, but she was really unclear of what her partner would look like, but she could feel it in her soul of what he would be like. She just is like, but I don't see him. And all of a sudden in her hypnosis sessions, she saw him and she
Oh,
described him to me. And I could see him because I'm able to do that where I can see what my client is seeing. And um, anyways, it was a beautiful session. And she's like, I have no idea what that was about, but I was just like, just just know in the linear world, he's coming. In the non-linear existence, he's here. And she wasn't really clear on what that meant. And then about 3 months ago, I'm looking on social media and there is this wonderful man in her life. And I'm like, oh, there he is. Oh my gosh. So I text her and I say, hey, is that who I think it is? She's like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you reached out. It is, it's him. It's the one that we saw years ago. I would have never imagined to come into my life now. And that's it too, is it's like 5 years later, and she's been through other relationships since then and thought, maybe that was just a fluke. Maybe that, because a lot of people go into like, I don't know if I can really trust if it's real. And it's like, trust the process,
Yeah.
trust what you saw and then just let it be and continue to do life the best you can. I always say, like, don't attach to it. Just
Mhm.
know what's coming. And what is
Right.
already yours is yours, period. And this man comes into her life and he looks exactly like we saw. And they are like twin flame, head over heels in love. And you can
Aw.
just tell like the purity of their love and the connection they have. I was like, that's it. It's exactly what she knew was was hers all along. And then it's just knowing that vibrationally attracts you to that individual. And in this linear world, it takes a little bit for things to break off and for
Yeah.
it to come into fruition. But she continued to trust that, and there he is. And they're building this life together. And I'm just so happy for her. So I'd say that is one of the sweetest and kind of bizarre things because even as a hypnotherapist, I know what I know, but sometimes I wonder too. you know,
Of
sometimes I'm
course.
like, yeah, I mean, like trust it and know it, but there's this like ego mind or
Right.
human mind in me that goes, maybe not, like, because we look for evidence in this world, right? We've
Mhm.
like science tells us like if you don't see it, it doesn't exist. And but I'm like, but I did see it in a spiritual plane. So what's that? And sure enough,
Here he
it
is.
just is. Here he is. And so,
Yeah.
anyways, that's one of my I just most beautiful, I say,
Favorites.
experience
Oh, for
favorite.
sure. I think
Yeah.
of the law of gestation, and
Mhm.
it's easy when you're big and pregnant, even when the baby doesn't come on the due date, you don't
Yeah.
think, I guess I'm not pregnant after all.
Right.
You
Because I
know
can't
it's
see
coming
the
because you
baby.
can feel it. You can feel it. And
Yeah.
there's so many cultures where usually not in the first world countries because we let our ego state get in the way, but there are
Mhm.
other cultures that feeling, that sense is an actual sense, like our smelling, our taste is just the knowing. And we've lost that, most of
Yeah.
us. But it's
Yeah.
so easy to just tap down into it when we can have the faith that we really do know what we do know and just be
Yeah.
patient until the delivery time. Because God's timing is always perfect. It's just
Right. Right.
connecting with that.
Totally.
That's so fun. That's a great story.
Yeah.
So, Andrea, if there's somebody that is just like, oh my gosh, I've got to work with this woman. You do seminars, you do online courses, and you do one-on-one. Where do people find you?
You can go to my website, andreafaye.co. And then you can also find me on Instagram or TikTok at I am Andrea Faye. And it's spelled Andrea like Andrea. So both those places, all those places are great. You can also email me at contact at andreafaye.co is a great way.
In the show notes, we'll have all of those links for everybody. And so we can get some connecting to Andrea. It's been such a joy to see where you've come and see how our paths have been so very similar. And I think thank you so much for coming on. Parting words of wisdom. What do you stand by? What is your one suggestion to everyone?
Lift where you stand. That is always like lift where you stand wherever you are. It's perfect and you have something to contribute. So be that.
I love that. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And on that note, everybody, you have a wonderful day and we'll reconnect later.
Thank you.
Thank you.